When my 3-year-old son told me that he was actually a girl, I had no idea what to make of it. But then I thought, okay, so he likes pink and pretty things. No problem. I can go with this. I figured the girl thing must be a phase, but I was worried. And my child seemed so sad. So I went to a psychologist. She said that I was right. It probably was a phase. She told me that 80% of kids like mine didn't end up being transgender. 80%? That's a lot. I told my family and friends not to worry. But what about the other 20%? I was scared of that part. I didn't know anything about it. What was this transgender thing? I think I saw something about it once on Jerry Springer. That certainly didn't seem like a healthy option for my sweet child. I went to a conference about gender, and a doctor who works with transgender kids said something really interesting. She said that 80% number was bunk. She said that statistic came in part from a study at a clinic for transgender kids in the Netherlands. Apparently, when the kids stopped going to the clinic assumed they weren't transgender anymore. But nobody checked up on them to make sure this was true. Maybe they'd found another doctor. Maybe their parents weren't okay with them being transgender. Maybe they'd moved. But we don't know, because nobody checked. There have been some other studies in the United States. These studies happened in the 1950s, up through the 1970s. They studied lots of boys who were considered too feminine for the time. The studies found that most of these boys grew up to be gay men, and only a few of them ended up being transgender. But they didn't distinguish between effeminate little boys and boys who actually said they were girls. What about those kids? What about the ones like mine, who insist they are another gender? Today, there's a gender clinic in Toronto that works with transgender kids. Their goal has been to prevent kids from turning out to be transgender. This clinic claims that 80% of their patients get cured. And they have a long history of telling parents that kids like mine shouldn't be allowed to play with girl stuff. Apparently, a lot of the problem is the mothers. So the moms get lots of therapy too. I tried a little bit of this method with my own kid. Her last Christmas as a boy was horrible. After that, I stopped fighting my kid. I finally let her start living as the girl she'd been saying she was. In 2013, a new study began at the University of Washington in Seattle. They're interviewing kids like mine, starting at age 3, and they're planning to interview them every year as they grow up to get some real research on these kids. Unlike the older studies, all the kids in this study say they are a different gender. Will they still say this when they're older? Or is it true that 80% of them will change their minds? We're just going to have to wait and see. So what about my child? Well, I actually already have a statistic for her. She's 100% amazing.